All right, everybody, welcome back. As a quick recap, we've learned this thing called if statements. So we have a little example up here. Password equals input. What is the password? So we're basically, with the input, allowing the person to type in something. All right, and then we're saying if password has the value of ABC123, and then the colon ends our if statement, we're going to say access granted. All right, so we'll run this really quick just to get an example. I have to save it. We'll save it into my Python files, exercise 6.2. Save. All right, what is the password? If I type in the correct thing, we get access granted. However, if I go back to this and I run it again, and I don't type in the right password, we get nothing. Now, we've seen enough login forms and things where if we type in an incorrect password, Python will tell us. It'll be like, hey, that's, or not Python, anything that you log into, your website, Gmail, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever you're using these days, if you type in the wrong password when you try to log in, it gives you an alert. So does that mean that literally they have millions of if statements for every possible for every possible incorrect password? We look at something like this, I have to make 100 trillion if statements. There has to be an easier way, and there is. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So if password equals ABC123, we're going to look at two different things today. First off, we're going to look at something called an else statement, and then afterwards, we're going to look at something called an ELIF statement, and they're both very related to each other. So let's tackle the else statement first. So what we can do, in any piece of code with an if statement, we can chain them or attach them together so that if and else are working on the same team. All right, so now what we have, I'm going to put this in. So notice we don't put any details in. We don't say else the password is incorrect or wrong or not what we're looking for. We just say else. And what this is basically saying is, hey Python, and ask them for their input. I want you to check to see if their password is this, or if the variable called password has this value. That's really all that we're asking Python about. It doesn't know what passwords mean. It doesn't care about user authentication. It doesn't care about any of that. Python just cares about truth and mathematical pieces. So if it is the case that the variable you happen to name password has the value of ABC123, we'll print access granted. But then below it, I've attached else. And I'm basically saying, if the check above me fails, I'm going to take over. And it's going to be my job to display or say something. So we're going to print that is incorrect. So now when we run this, I can type in something ridiculous. I did not have to make an if statement for that, but when I press enter, it's going to say that is incorrect. And this is a really powerful thing in code, because we can check for something, but if that check doesn't work, we have an else as a backup statement. All right. So what you could do is you could put else at the end of some of the games that you've created. Not yet, but you will eventually be able to put else at the end. So if they're guessing a number between 1 and 10, you could say with an else statement at the bottom, please reread the rules and make sure that you are placing a number in there between 1 and 10. If you type in 15 or 29 or 0 or anything like that, it's not going to allow it, or it's going to kind of give you this extra warning of like, hey, you did something outside of all of the expectations. So why don't we try something like that? Why don't we quickly shift this game? Let's say answer equals input. What is the most popular house pet? And I'm going to say if answer equals dog, I'm going to say correct. But then I'm going to say if answer equals cat, print close but not exactly. We're just kind of doing a fun little game, and then we'll just put in else that is correct, right? So this This should work. Now, if you know how I teach, and you've watched a bunch of my videos now, you know that I sometimes set us up for our code to all crash and burn down to the ground because, oh, this didn't work, and we need to find a solution to fix it. So what we have here is, I'm going to check if the answer is dog, then it'll say correct. Then I'm going to check if it's cat. I'm going to say close but not exactly. And then my else statement should, at the end, cover any other thing, right? Well, let's try it a couple times and see what we get. So the first thing I'm going to set up is cat. Close but not exactly. Okay, that kind of worked. Let's try something else. Let's say the aardvark. That is incorrect. All right, that seems to be working. So we can have this huge, feeling of confidence, like, oh, we did it, we solved the problem, everything works perfectly. Let's try that dog again, or for the first time. Correct? That is incorrect. Oh, that didn't work out. Something's wrong here. So let's go back to our code and figure out what exactly is happening. I don't think anything's wrong with this input statement. This looks pretty good. If the answer is dog, we print correct. I don't see anything wrong with that. If the answer is cat, we say close but not exactly, and then the else statement covers that. So what's happening, though, let me separate these a little bit. All right. What's really technically happening is, if I can separate these a little more, this is how the team is working. We have this lone if statement up here, but then we have the if and the else down here on their own separate team. What we want to do is bring all three of these, or more of them, together to make them all work as the same logic item. And what we need to do is we need to change this if down here to ELIF. What's basically saying now is, hey Python, if the answer is dog, we'll print correct. If that fails, here's your second thing that I want you to take a look at. And then if that fails, we have an else that covers any other possible scenario. All right. This ELIF is a huge, huge factor in making sure that all three of these work together. And the way that we write any of these, we always start with an if, then we have ELIF, that should not be tabbed in, any number of ELIFs. It doesn't matter how many you want to put in, but then finally, at the end, we want to end it with an else. So it's kind of like the sandwich that you bring together. If on the top, else on the bottom, those are like the bread, and then any number of ELIFs between, including 0. You could just say, I don't want an ELIF because that doesn't suit my code. All right? But that's the way that we need to set these things up, because otherwise you get these weird activations like what we just looked at when you typed in dog. You got correct and you got that is incorrect, because at that point, these two are the only two working on a team. And I like using the phrase like on a team because, it's like the if checks for everything. And then if it doesn't work, it passes on the responsibility to the next guy. This guy checks. And then if that doesn't work, we got this guy sitting all the way at the end with an else statement saying, I'll take over in case none of these things work. It's kind of like whatever happens is going to be handled somewhere in the code as a team. All right, so if I run it now and I type in dog, now we just get correct, because what happens is once this if statement activates, it sends an alert to this and says don't bother, which also sends an alert to this which says, hey, don't bother. It's already been taken care of as the first result. All right, just as an example, if we wanted to add a third item to this, I could say ELIF answer equals fish, and I'll print not too many people have a fish as a pet anymore. Just something silly to toss in. So now this if checks, then this one checks, then this one checks, then this one checks at the end in case none of the above were activated. It works the exact same way. So if we were to type in fish down here, all right, not too many people have a fish as a pet anymore. So if we look down here, we checked for dog, that failed, so it kind of like passed the baton onto this guy. Checked for fish, this one activated, so it sent a message and said, don't worry, And then this one sent a message down to here and said, don't worry about it. It's already been taken care of. All right. So those are the if, ELIF, and ELSE chains that you should start to get familiar with. Again, you can have any number of ELIFs between it. But I just wanted to kind of, give you this example. This is really powerful, especially with that else, just being able to have your stuff being able to respond, or, just have like this emergency backup plan in case the things you're expecting don't happen. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to go back to your two number guessing games, the 1 through 100 and the 1 through 10, and you're going to fix them so that they have ELIFs and ELSEs attached on there. Now, with your number guessing game 1 through 100, there are some little tricks that you can do to make sure that you can actually call out the user if they type in something like 10,000, because that's way outside of the range between 1 and 100. So if you're trying to really push yourself and trying to figure out a way to I want more challenges, I want to try to solve mathematical problems using code, try to figure that out. So on your number guessing game 1 through 100, if they type in something that's larger than 100 or smaller than 0, if you check for those first, then if you check later on for the plain old stuff that you were looking for, you might get some success with getting it to actually call out the person and say, hey, you can't guess 135 because the number guessing game was 1 through 100. Same thing with the number guessing game 1 through 10. It's a lot easier just because you can have an else statement at the bottom that covers for anything that's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. All right. So if you get some results, toss some comments in the YouTube video at the bottom, and be more than happy to interact with you on there. So looking forward to seeing what you can make, and thanks for watching.